There is a moment right before a bad fall where the body tries to catch itself and fails. We usually blame a slippery rug or a clumsy step. But the truth is much scarier. The problem actually started years ago with a small ache in your foot that you decided to ignore. But that ache isn't just getting old. It is a warning light. It means the connection between your feet and your brain is going dark. And when your brain can't feel the floor, it's like walking blindfolded. But you can take the blindfold off. In this episode, we are going to teach you one simple, gentle movement that turns those nerves back on, bringing back your vision, your memory, and reducing inflammation with every step. Welcome back to the Senior Health Podcast, where we help you stay safe, strong, and living in your own home for life. Today, we are talking about the silent epidemic of foot pain. Now, hear me out. National Institutes of Health shows that nearly 80% of us over 60 are walking around with numb or painful feet. It drains your battery and it puts you at risk. But there is a better way. Sitting across from me is Japan's oldest physician. He is here to prove that you don't have to accept the decline and that the secret to staying young starts at the very bottom of your feet with one simple exercise. Doctor, welcome back. Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here. Now, let me start by asking everyone something very simple. Have you ever stood up and felt unsure for just a second, like your feet didn't quite know where the ground was? Show us some engagement and type one in. Clears throat the comments if you've ever had that split second of unsteadiness. I know you said earlier that this brief hesitation is often the body's earliest signal that something important is shifting, right? Yes. And that sensation is not random. Loss of sensation in the feet is one of the quietest but most serious changes that comes with age. As those nerves grow less responsive, balance weakens, confidence erodes, and even emotional steadiness can change. Most people are told it's arthritis or fatigue, when in many cases it's a communication problem that can be improved. So today we're going to explain how a very simple daily practice can help bring snorts, blood flow back, realign posture, and settle the nervous system. We'll also talk about the kinds of changes people often notice after making it part of their routine. So please stay with us because this may change how you interpret the signals your body has been sending you for years. I'm thinking of a former school teacher in her late 70s who came in convinced her hip was failing. But the real issue was lower down. Years of ignored foot discomfort had weakened her arches. Once she began gently stimulating the soles each day with this exercise, her pain eased, her posture lifted, and she told me she finally felt grounded again. That's the power of restoring the foundation. When the base is supported, the rest of the body can begin to recover. Which brings us to the real question. What is this one exercise we are discussing today? And what's actually happening inside the body when we stimulate the feet like this? The exercise we're discussing today is simple. It's rolling a small ball beneath the sole of the foot, slowly and with attention. But before we talk about how to do it, there's something important to understand. This isn't really a foot exercise. It's a nervous system exercise. What you're restoring isn't flexibility, it's communication. When you roll a ball under your foot, you're not just loosening tissue. You're waking up thousands of sensory receptors that send constant information to the brain's balance and orientation centers. Those receptors read pressure, texture, temperature, and movement. When they go quiet, the brain loses its reference point. So, this simple rolling motion is giving the brain its map back. Exactly. The feet are the body's primary translators. When their signals weaken, the brain compensates by tightening muscles, shifting posture, and bracing unnecessarily. Over time, that compensation shows up as neck tension, spinal discomfort, headaches, and fatigue. It's striking to realize that problems we feel in the upper body can begin so far away from the head. They are not far away at all. The soles are deeply connected to the nervous system. They influence reflex pathways tied to posture, breathing, circulation, and even digestion. That's why traditional Japanese and Chinese medicine used foot stimulation to calm the entire body long before modern science explained why it worked. And now research is finally catching up to that idea. Yes, research from Kyoto University and findings published in the American Journal of Physical Therapy show that gentle foot stimulation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's primary repair and recovery pathway. In controlled studies where older adults practiced daily foot stimulation for several weeks, researchers observed reduced stress markers, steadier blood pressure, and improved heart rate variability. That shift matters because when the nervous system leaves constant alert mode, inflammation begins to settle. Circulation improves to the brain and eyes, and mental clarity becomes easier to maintain. As cortisol drops and blood flow stabilizes, both memory and visual processing benefit, not as isolated functions, but as part of a calmer, better regulated system. So what starts under the foot is really a message to the entire nervous system, telling the body it can stop bracing and start regulating again. Precisely. It shifts the body out of constant alertness and back into recovery. Think of it like returning an instrument. Once the bass note is corrected, everything else begins to fall back into harmony. That would explain why people often report clearer thinking after doing this regularly. Yes, better circulation and nerve signaling improve oxygen delivery to the brain. Many seniors tell me they feel lighter, calmer, more emotionally steady. That's not placebo. That's the nervous system regaining balance. It reminds me of my grandmother. She used to walk barefoot on the grass every morning. She never talked about nerves or receptors. She just said it made her feel peaceful inside. Now I realize she was restoring that same grounding connection. She understood something instinctively. And the good news is, anyone can recreate that effect safely at home. So as we continue, I'd like to walk through how to start, what kind of ball to use, how long to practice, and just as importantly, how to avoid overdoing it. Well, let me explain how I usually guide people. At the very beginning, I ask them to start seated with a small ball that gives easily under the foot, something like a tennis ball, or even softer. The goal is not to press hard, but to let the sole rest on the ball and begin to move slowly. Softness matters because we are inviting the nervous system to speak again, not forcing it to respond. That already feels reassuring because so many seniors worry they'll hurt themselves if they do it wrong. Of course, and that fear often keeps people from starting at all. This movement is not about strength or endurance. It is about re-establishing communication between the foot and the brain in the gentlest way possible. I hear that a lot in my own patients. This constant concern that exercise has to be pushed to count. Yes, and that belief causes more harm than most people realize. When you roll the foot, you are not stretching tissue aggressively or chasing discomfort. You are simply offering the nerves a steady, curious signal. If the body feels safe, it responds far more effectively. That shifts the whole mindset from doing something correctly to actually listening. Exactly. And that's how you know you're doing it right. You might notice warmth spreading through the foot, or your breathing becoming slower without effort. Some people feel their shoulders drop or the jaw unclench, which tells us the nervous system is settling. None of that requires force. In fact, if there is pain, it usually means the signal is too loud, right? That makes it feel accessible instead of intimidating. So, let's begin with patience. Start with gentle pressure and slow movement, and allow the foot to explore rather than perform. Stay seated at first so balance is not a concern. This creates trust, which is the foundation of progress. I can imagine that trust is what keeps people coming back to it. Yes, and once that trust is there, consistency comes almost on its own. I usually suggest starting with 30 seconds on each foot, moving the ball slowly from the heel toward the arch and then forward toward the ball of the foot. There's no need to roll continuously. You can pause on tender or quiet areas and let the weight of the foot rest there for a breath or two. After a few days, many people naturally work up to 1 or 2 minutes per foot once a day. The body begins to recognize this as supportive, not demanding. The nerves respond more clearly. Circulation improves and the movement feels smoother with less effort. That's when the response becomes more efficient. Not because you're doing more, but because the signal is clear. These small, repeated sessions are what create meaningful change. They don't announce themselves loudly, but over time the body simply starts working better. I think that quiet progress is often something that many people underestimate at the start. Unfortunately, yes. And it's where the most important work happens. When people rush or try to do too much, the nervous system often retreats instead of opening. Less effort allows the body to stay receptive. That's why this practice rewards gentleness more than intensity. That really reframes how we think about improvement and control. And it leads us to something many people are surprised by. The amount of time you spend matters far less than how often you return to it. There's a rhythm the nervous system responds to. And once you understand that rhythm, the practice will actually lead to results. Okay, we have to hear this then because it sounds like frequency might matter more than duration. How often should someone realistically be doing this? And what changes tend to show up first? Well, short and daily matters far more than long or intense. Like I just said, 1 to 2 minutes per foot once a day is often enough to give the nervous system a steady signal it can trust. The body learns through repetition, not through force, especially later in life. That really challenges the idea that more effort automatically leads to better results. Yes, and I hear that belief so often on my own patients. They've been taught that progress must be earned through strain, when the nervous system actually responds best to gentleness and consistency. When you repeat a small movement every day, the brain begins to expect it and reorganize around it. That's when change becomes stable instead of a temporary. It sounds less like exercise and more like teaching the body a new habit. So, what can someone doing this expect? That's exactly right. In the first days, people often notice their legs feel lighter when they stand, or that their footing feels more certain. Breathing tends to slow without effort, and there's a quiet sense of ease that wasn't there before. These aren't imagined effects. They're signs that circulation and sensory feedback are improving together. That kind of early feedback must be encouraging for people who felt stuck. It is. And it's important to trust those small signals. As the feet send clear information upward, the body stops overcompensating with tension. The ankles move more freely, the knees feel less guarded, and balance becomes something the body handles automatically again. Confidence often returns before people even realize it has. That subtle return of confidence is what I love about this because it is something I see that lights people up, and it often surprises them how quickly it begins. Not because the body is suddenly stronger, but because it's better organized when the nervous system receives consistent input. It reduces unnecessary muscle guarding. That efficiency is what people experience as lightness or steadiness. So the improvement isn't about pushing harder, it's about clearing interference. Exactly. And once that interference clears, changes begin to ripple outward. People tell me they sleep more deeply, wake with less heaviness in their legs, and feel calmer during the day. Mood softens, and mental clarity improves because the body is no longer stuck in constant alertness. These are natural downstream effects of regulation, not effort. Those are powerful changes. When someone reaches that point, is there a simple way to progress this beyond rolling? Maybe a standing variation that strengthens the foot-to-brain connection safely. Yes, there is. And this is where the title truly comes to life. Once rolling feels comfortable and the feet are sending clear signals again, I snorts introduce a standing variation that uses the same ball, but engages the entire nervous system at once. You stand near a chair or counter for support. Place the ball under one foot and keep most of your weight on the other leg. The foot on the ball stays light, just enough pressure to stay connected, right? And make sure to hold on to something since falling is not the goal here. Indeed. And I promise this single progression is important because it brings vision, balance, and memory online together as you gently roll the ball forward and back, then slightly side to side. Your eyes, inner ear, and foot receptors must coordinate in real time. Research in plantar sensory training shows that when older adults combine foot stimulation with lightweight bearing, the brain improves proprioception, postural control, and sensory integration more effectively than with isolated exercises. That explains why this feels like more than just a foot movement. Exactly. This is no longer local work. You are training how the brain receives information from the feet, interprets it visually, and responds with calm, organized movement. That same process reduces unnecessary muscle tension and snorts, lowers inflammatory stress signals throughout the body. This is why people often notice clearer thinking and steadier vision, along with improved balance. So, I guess we could say that the standing version completes the circuit. Yes, and it's still done gently. I usually suggest 20 to 30 seconds per foot at first once a day. The goal is not to hold perfect balance, but to allow small adjustments to happen naturally. That gentle wobble is the brain relearning stability. And studies in geriatric physical therapy show that this kind of safe sensory challenge is what strengthens balanced memory and reduces fall risk over time. That reframes wobbling as progress, not failure. It does. And that shift matters. When the brain becomes more efficient at organizing movement, it spends less energy bracing and more energy repairing. Blood flow improves, inflammatory load decreases, and cognitive clarity follows because the nervous system is no longer stuck in survival mode. This is why one simple exercise done correctly can influence vision, memory, and inflammation together, and they're still using the same simple ball precisely. Nothing new is added. The exercise simply evolves as the nervous system is ready. That's what makes it so powerful. It's not about stacking routines, but about deepening one signal until the body remembers how to regulate itself again. Amazing, doctor. I guess we can close the episode and start practicing. If you are still listening, and if there is anything that's not clear, please ask your question in the comments. With that, please leave a like and subscribe. Oh, and watch this next video right now. Yes, please. We've picked this one especially for you.